So
The cookies, yes.
yeah, well, you never been.
Guys, I'm sorry to interrupt this here. I see this is going well. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to the House Economic Matters Committee. Today is Friday, January 29th, 2021. We have 4 bills before us today. Some guy named Davis has all 4. So we will get started. I will say quickly for those who testifying, the questions can only be asked by the members. We've had a bit of an issue with others joining in, but for this particular process, it's just the members, the delegates that should be asking questions of the witnesses. So if we could be mindful of that, I would be most appreciative. And with that, let me go ahead and get us started so we can so we can get to the process. The first bill of the day is going to be House Bill 578, Public Utilities Annual Reports. See what I got here. Just a second. Chairman Stanek, are you with us?
Good afternoon, Chairman Davis. I am.
Please go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. It's very good to see everybody after the past year. I look forward to seeing you hopefully later this year. The PSC has two bills of note this morning. The first one is HB 578. This is a housekeeping bill designed to better align the submission dates of 3 annual reports that are due to the legislature every year. The two reports that I'd like to discuss initially is the annual Empower Energy Efficiency Report, as well as the Commission's annual report. Currently, they are due on March 1st. This bill would move the due date back 60 days to May 1st. The reason that this would help the Commission is because much of the data that we receive from the utilities, both for the annual report and the Empower report, are not received until very close to the deadline. So moving the deadline back by 60 days will allow the Commission to provide a better and more accurate and more valuable report to the General Assembly. Additionally, with respect to the Electric Universal Service Program report, which is called the EUSP, designed for low-income customers, that report we're asking to be pushed back by just 1 month from December 1st to January 1st. Currently, we receive information from the Department of Human Services in November. By pushing it back 1 month, it allows us to fully review that information and submit that report to you on January 1st. For those reasons, I would ask that you have a favorable report on HB 578. Thank you. And Chairman Davis, would you like me to provide some testimony on the next PSC housekeeping bill as well?
Sure, that's the only other person testifying on this bill is Lisa Smith of your office. So unless Lisa's going to add something, then we can switch over and go on to House Bill 556.
I do not believe Lisa will be providing additional testimony. So I will move to HB 556. This is a good government bill. It's designed to take what we've learned over the course of the pandemic by having virtual hearings with respect to our rate cases and our certificate of public convenience and necessity cases. Currently, the PUA does not require that the Commission have in-person hearings, but that's what we've had for most of the Commission's practice. By allowing us to go virtual, we found that we could engage more ratepayers by allowing them to participate from the comfort of their home, such as what we are doing right now. Of course, all the necessary public notice measures would occur under HB 556, and we believe it would save both the state government and ratepayers a substantial amount of funds because they will not have to drive to a high school auditorium or a cafeteria in the evenings or weekends in order to testify to the Commission. An additional benefit is that by having a virtual hearing such as this one, we'll be able to tape and provide all of these hearings in real time via our YouTube channel. For these reasons, I would urge a favorable report on HB 556. Thank you.
All right. Are there any questions for Mr. Chairman on either of those bills?
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Charkoudian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chairman Stanek, for being here. And I will say I have thoroughly enjoyed watching the PSC YouTube channel this interim. I just want to check to see, and I fully support this bill. I just want to make sure that this doesn't mean there'll never be in-person hearings. And I think there is a value, and I want to thank you for the time that you came to the community that was affected by the Flower Branch explosion and did an in-person hearing there where it was that direct community. It wasn't people having to drive from all over the state to get there. I just want to see if it's your thought that if you move in this direction, sort of formalizing this process, that you would never do in-person hearings, or just that you could sort of decide on a case-by-case basis when it makes sense to do it in person. And partly I ask, that community in particular is one that has limited internet access, limited minutes on their cell phones and so on. And so I just want to check to make sure that you would still have the ability to have that flexibility, and you envision that would still be possible with this change.
Yes, that is most definitely the case. I find it very, very valuable to hold in-person hearings, and we've traveled everywhere from Hagerstown and the Panhandle to the Eastern Shore. There is obviously a time and place for in-person hearings once we're past the pandemic, and this bill would only supplement our current hearing practice by adding virtual hearings in addition to in-person hearings.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anyone else? Remember, I can't always see you, so jump in if you have a question. If not, that concludes our hearing on House Bill, what was that, 566 and 578. So if I can, I'd like to go to House Bill 606. For the record, I am Delegate Derek Davis, appearing before you to present House Bill 606, Electricity and Gas Limited Income Mechanisms. This emergency bill gives utilities the opportunity to propose and the Public Service Commission the authority to approve a special rate, program, or another mechanism to assist Marylanders who need our help the most. Currently, Maryland utilities can only provide special relief to limited income customers in the case of a general epidemic, pestilence, or flood. But we are not allowed to do it in any other instance. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services tracks utility managed assistance programs on their website. Based on this information, utilities in 20 states offer discounted rates to limited income customers. Utilities in 19 states offer fixed credits to limited income customers, and utilities in 8 states offer credits based on a percentage of the customer's income. We don't have to look far for examples of utility managed assistance programs. Both PEPCO and Washington Gas offer discounts to limited income customers just across the border in Washington, D.C. I believe that we should have that same opportunity support for Marylanders. With this bill, I've tried to avoid a one-size-fits-all approach. A program designed to support my constituents in Prince George's County may not be the best program to support residents in Hagerstown, Chestertown, or anywhere else in the state. That's why this bill allows the Public Service Commission to approve limited income programs that are designed specifically for the residents they serve. I believe Marylanders need our help right now, and they will continue to rely on our assistance in the future. I ask you to join me in supporting House Bill 606 with the favorable committee report. I'm happy to take any questions at this point in time. Slide this over. If not, I'll go to the witness list. Charles Washington. Is Mr. Washington with us? All right, hearing none. let's go to William Crest. Mr. Crest, are you with us? This is going really well.
Yeah, a lot of people aren't getting in.
We just admitted them.
Okay. I'm hearing they were just admitted, so I will try this a second time. There we go. Mr. Washington. Unmute yourself and you are up.
Oh, I'm up.
Yes.
Well, thank you, and good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm Charles Washington, and I'm here on behalf of Baltimore Gas and Electric in support of House Bill 606. This bill would clarify state law to make it clear that the commission has the authority to review and potentially approve utility managed programs to support limited income customers. So you may ask, what needs to be clarified? So if you'll turn, if you'll scroll to page 5 of the bill, to lines 17 through 19, you'll see language that prevents utilities from offering special rates. This provision casts doubt on the utility's ability to support our customers in this way, and it's one reason that HB 606 is necessary. If this bill passes, Maryland would not be the first state to allow utility managed programs. According to the Department of Health and Human Services, utilities in at least 31 states offer these types of programs. That includes our sister utilities in Illinois, in New Jersey, in Pennsylvania, and just across the border in Washington, D.C. HB 606 assertions that the societal benefits of a well-constructed mechanism to support Maryland's limited income customers is in the public interest is a statement that BGE agrees with. And we understand that well-designed programs may take different shapes. As we review the programs established by utilities around the country, we know that some utilities offer a discounted rate for their limited income customers. We noted that other utilities offered a flat rate or rebates on specific charges on the utility bills. And other utilities still limited the percentage of a customer's income that could be allocated to energy bills. With all the diversity of solutions available to assist customers based on their specific needs, we appreciate that.
Hold on a second, Charles. Hold on. Everybody, we need to mute the phones. Mute the computers, please. Go on, Charles.
Sure. I guess I was saying that there's a diversity of solutions to the problem this bill seems to solve. And what we appreciate in this bill is that it leaves it to the commission to rule on programs designed to meet the specific needs of utility service territory. So what I mean by that is that the program that makes the most sense in Baltimore City might be different from the program that works well on the Eastern Shore or in Southern Maryland. And this bill gives the PSC the space to first remove that statutory hurdle that would prevent limited income programs being offered by utilities, and then the authority to work directly with individual companies to design a program to meet the specific needs of those utility service territories. I'll close by saying this. BGE appreciates the challenges that our customers in our community are facing in the wake of COVID-19, and we're committed to doing our part to support Central Maryland. Still, as we work to address the challenge that is directly before us, it's important that we're mindful about the longer term and sustaining pressures facing our neighbors who need our help most. This bill provides immediate and long-term support to our customers. And for that reason, BGE supports House Bill 606 and respectfully requests a favorable report.
Any questions for Mr. Washington?
Aaron's.
Delegate Ahrens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ultimately, this is going back to the ratepayers, right?
Yeah, unmute yourself, Charles. Unmute yourself, Charles.
Working on it. All right, Mr. Chair. The bill leaves it to the utility and the commission to work through how to allocate the costs of the programs. But yes, it's safe to assume that a portion of the costs or that the costs would be shared amongst Maryland's ratepayers.
Okay, what about the utility itself? What about, we look at these bills, and one of the problems I keep having with some of our bills is I look at some of the bills come up about making so-and-so do something for infrastructure, this person do something for this. But ultimately, you guys just go back to the PSC and say, hey, here's our cost of doing business. We want to keep our stockholders happy. How do we work through that?
That's a good question, Delegate. You know, as we read it under this bill, a utility would propose and the commission has the authority to review how we allocate the cost of the mechanism. Now, undoubtedly, that would be the focus of filings and briefings and hearings and a full regulatory process where all the parties would have the space to make their case, have their arguments heard, and be considered. To your point, in a way, this is no different than many programs that come before you that benefit a portion of the customer base while more customers sharing the cost. I think what makes this proposal different is that those customers who are benefiting are the customers who need our help the most.
Okay, well, then the next question would be, now this thing, is this just for distribution of the electric, or is this for supply? Are we just hitting on one side, or are we getting both sides? The bill.
So the bill, as we read it, broadly authorizes the commission to consider a program. So the idea is to remove the statutory hurdle and then work through the details through a regulatory process that has the input of multiple stakeholders. So this bill doesn't specify what parts of the bill we grant relief to. It just gives the opportunity to support limited income customers.
Okay, I guess my whole problem with this is that you guys have a whole lobby group to talk to people, but the people don't necessarily have a lobby group other than themselves, and a lot of people can't even spell PSC, and that's a real difficult thing for me to sit back and say that they can go out there and actually have input on these things. That's not something the everyday person really understands. So I'd be interested in seeing if there was a way to work around some of this. But thank you very much, Charles. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Delegate.
Anyone else? Delegate Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this question is for anybody that wants to answer it. The bill's structured in such a way that it talks about 175% below the federal poverty rate, being 67 at 200% below the federal poverty rate also. So I feel like it's narrowly structured, but I want to get sort of a sense of that. I mean, Charles, maybe you can answer this. I mean, do you have any idea about how many customers would fall into this program so we could get some type of sense of the cost moving forward? I mean, I understand what the chairman's trying to do. I like it. It looks like he's trying to help poor retired people with their electric bills. I get it. But I'm just trying to get a sense of how many people this would affect based on the current structure of the bill, if you know.
That's a great question, Delegate Howard. And what I ask is that you let me come have a more detailed conversation with you. And the reason is, of course, that's a moving target, right? The number of customers who would be eligible today under COVID-19 might be different than the number who were available last February. So
and I gotta think that is going to increase because we are sort of hitting this silver tsunami, if you will, and those folks are getting into that age category. So yeah, I would love it if you would stop by and we could chat about the numbers. And I understand it is a moving target. I understand the purpose of the bill. But I'm just trying. There is no real, in the fiscal note, there is no real gauge as far as cost. And I think that's because it is a moving target. But if you could give me some information on how many people this would affect in your area, that would be fantastic.
Happy to follow up with you.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think I may have a better idea, Delegate Howard, since you're on the Public Utilities Subcommittee. I think we'll have Charles swing by the subcommittee and all of you guys have that conversation, because that is a good question, and we do need to have the answers for that. So it'll definitely go to subcommittee for further consideration before anything else, going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there anyone else? Delegate Tricoudian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So earlier during the pandemic, when we had a conversation about affordability issues, one of the questions that was asked was what happens with arrearages, and we've looked a lot at sort of EUSP and LIHEAP and how to make sure members of our community have access to that. And I see this as a way of adjusting the overall rate structure to be able to respond to situations like that. I think if I understand it correctly, it could be temporary or it could be permanent. But I wonder if in this, there's the ability to, what we talked about in that hearing over the summer, the briefing over the summer was there a way when we're in a recession for some of the costs to be borne by shareholders? So right now, when there's a need to deal with, when some people are experiencing pain, some a lot more than others, it gets spread across all the ratepayers. And there's a role for that, I think, for sure. But I'm just wondering if this bill, or if it would take another bill for in those times when there's a need to spread the pain, if some of that pain, some of that payment can come from shareholders as opposed to always, being sure of this guaranteed return that they're going to get, and when we hit the recessions, it's other ratepayers who are always essentially going to bail each other out. So I'm wondering if you want to speak to that as it relates to this bill, or if it doesn't, maybe if you'd be open to something like that in the future.
Thank you, Delegate Charkoudian. Appreciate your question. I don't believe this bill speaks to that question that you raised previously and that you're returning to today. What I'd say is that my company, BGE, has been very proactive since the start of the pandemic in finding ways to support our customers. You might actually seen very recently, we announced a pledge to dedicate $15 million to assist small businesses with COVID-19 relief. And so earlier this month, eligible businesses who are in our service territory begin signing up for BGE's Energizing Small Business Grants Program, up to $20,000 each. That was with shareholder dollars. We also made a $1.5 million contribution to the fuel fund with shareholder dollars, gave to county and minister business pandemic relief funds with shareholder dollars, and supported a number of other organizations like the Food Bank and United Way of Central Maryland, PCs for People, and the Baltimore Community Foundation, all with shareholder dollars. So we really are working to do our part. But to your direct question, that is not covered in this bill.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I just want to clarify that I think, and I've worked with PEPCO on making sure, for example, that renters are aware that they can apply for LIHEAP even if they're paying their utilities through their rent. So, I appreciate the sort of creative response, but I think the point from a policy perspective is that that's voluntary and kind of depends on the generosity of the company as opposed to putting into regulations. The way this puts into regulations, into statute and then regulations, the ability for the PSC to redirect how rates are recovered, the possibility of doing that for so that shareholders kind of share the burden as well, not on a voluntary basis, but as part of policy. But I appreciate that that's not what's happening in this bill, and maybe we'll take a look at that for the future. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anyone else?
Delegate
Impellitteri.
And this is for the sponsor of the bill. So we have a whole lot of bills dealing with energy, and they're all fixes for what we believe a problem is, what the ill is. And I'm glad you said this stuff is going to go to subcommittee, because just like when we go to a doctor and he gives a prescription and you go to the pharmacist to get it filled, they ask what prescription you're on. The problem is that we just went to 5 different doctors. We have 5 different prescriptions, and we're not telling the pharmacist because we haven't filled those yet. So we really need to look how these bills are going to interact with the other bills that we're doing and what laws are already out there. So we don't make the mistake of implementing something that just isn't going to work because it works against something else that's already existing. And that's just a statement. So I'm glad we're going to go to subcommittee and look at that because we are getting quite a few of these bills. So that was my statement, Mr. Chairman.
No problem. Nothing at all. Look, I believe it's rare the occasion when a bill comes in that doesn't need further study or more input, anything along those lines. So I have no problem. We examine what's before us. If it makes sense, we do it. If it doesn't make sense, we don't do it. That's how we've always operated. So nothing's changed. That's still the policy with us.
I know the number of bills on this subject though has, so that's why I'm bringing it up, because that is in the past, we didn't have that many bills on this subject.
Yeah, that's probably the result of, what's going on, the pandemic,
Right.
Everybody, wanting to do something, but we'll work there. We'll figure out what's the proper policy.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Kress, are you ready?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Bill Kress here today on behalf of the Retail Energy Supply Association and on behalf of WGL Energy Services. We did sign up favorable with amendments. Mr. Chairman, we think this is a great bill and it's a sound policy. We just have a little bit of concern about how this will be implemented. I think my clients are concerned whether or not it'll be done in a competitively neutral manner. And I think they're also concerned about how they will recover the cost and over what classes. And so I think we respectfully would request that maybe the bill would be better off with some amendments to put up some further guideposts for the Public Service Commission when they take up these proceedings. Again, we think it's a great idea and it definitely could help those folks who are having problems paying their bills. We'd just like to see it done in a competitively neutral manner. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Kress? Seeing none, thank you very much. That's all of the oral testimony that we have for House Bill 606. There is additional written testimony, so that's part of our document. So we will close that one and go to the final bill of the day. It's House Bill 561. Give me a second here. So I'm pulling everything. All right. Thermal energy. Thermal energy is a necessity. We need some things to be heated and others to be cooled. Today, most heating and cooling is powered by fossil fuels, either burned directly for heat or used to generate electricity for cooling. Green, carbon neutral technologies exist, and we must adopt them as fast as possible to avert a climate catastrophe. Washington, D.C. has demonstrated the viability of wastewater thermal and biogas as sources of renewable thermal energy, with several systems in operation. The Council of the District of Columbia has recognized both sources as renewable in the DC Renewable Portfolio Standard, and any system in the PJM region is eligible for certification in the District of Columbia. Unfortunately, such systems may not at present be certified in Maryland. I believe it's time for Maryland to take the lead among states to encourage the growth and adoption of renewable thermal energy systems to increase the stability of the market for renewable energy credits, and to continue to do our part to fight climate change. We can accomplish all of this by recognizing a simple fact that wastewater thermal and renewable steam are renewable sources of energy. Let us pass HB 561 and add these two valuable methods to our suite of renewable energy solutions. Happy to Happy to take any questions at this point in time, or if not, I will go to our witness list. Questions? If not, is Jonathan Carpenter with us? Jonathan.
I am, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Quickly, I'm going to introduce myself, tell you a little bit about DC Water, and then we have our subject matter expert, Mr. Saul Kenter, hopefully, who will be testifying on the technical aspects of this bill. But again, we want to urge a favorable vote on House Bill 561, wastewater thermal and renewable steam as a tier 1, recognized as a tier 1 for the Maryland RPS. DC Water, a lot of folks don't know, we see ourselves also as a regional authority because we treat wastewater effluent from Montgomery County, Prince George's County, as well as Fairfax and Loudoun, Virginia. You know, we do about 1.9 million gallons per year. We do about 700,000 plus gallons per day for Montgomery County and 430,000 for Prince George's County, working with WSSC. So we are one of the world's largest, if not the largest, wastewater treatment facility. So again, a lot of folks don't know that. We're governed by IMA, where members from Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Fairfax and Loudoun County actually govern Blue Plains and deal with the structure of our facilities and what we do. So a lot of folks figure just because they hear DC Water that it does not pertain to our surrounding jurisdictions, and that's not true. We're very vested in our other surrounding partners. So again, I just wanted to urge you to take a look at this bill and a favorable vote for 561. You're on mute, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Jonathan. Let me go to Saul Kenter, and then we'll take questions for either you or Mr. Kenter, since you're both from the same agency.
Yes, thank you.
Saul Kenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the committee for the time we have to appear before you today. I want to emphasize that we are asking for a favorable vote on House Bill 561, which would add wastewater thermal energy to Maryland's renewable portfolio standard and clarify that energy from biogas qualifies as renewable regardless of the form in which it is used. Addressing wastewater thermal first, this is a technology that uses the sewer water or treated wastewater at a wastewater treatment plant as a source of thermal energy. Wastewater is relatively warm in the winter and relatively cool in the summer. And as a result, it can be used as a highly efficient source for heat when you need to heat something up, and as a sink for heat when you want to cool something down. The efficiency gains are due to the temperature advantage and the lower gradient versus, for example, an air conditioner, which sends heat to hot outside air. The scientific principle behind this technology is identical to geothermal, which is already a recognized tier 1 renewable energy source. The application is a little different. You need to be able to handle sewage, which is nasty stuff, as we know better than anyone. But the technology is there. The solutions are demonstrated with long track records of success in both Europe and Canada, and now also in DC, where we have had several systems running for the last few years. Biogas has already been recognized by Maryland as a tier 1 renewable source. Unfortunately, the Public Service Commission of Maryland's interpretation of the statute is that it can only be used to generate electricity and qualify as a tier 1 renewable source of energy. In our view, it should not matter whether the biogas is used to generate electricity, heat, mechanical energy, or any other form. The atmosphere does not care how we use the energy, only that we replace the fossil fuels that are adding carbon to it. House Bill 561 would clarify that regardless of how biogas is used, it would then qualify as tier 1 renewable. Thermal energy is important and crucial to the decarbonization of our economy. It makes up a large proportion of the amount of energy that's used in buildings, which in turn make up a large proportion of the total energy we use in our economy. recognizing that thermal energy can be generated from renewable sources is something that Maryland has already done. And we would ask simply that it recognize that there are other renewable sources growing in importance and in potential application that are not currently recognized in the law. Thank you very much. Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, delegates. I appreciate the time today, and I'm looking forward very much to any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Kenter or Mr. Carpenter? Delegate Charkoudian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Jonathan and Saul for taking time to meet with me the other day. I don't know if this is a question for them or maybe it's for you, Mr. Chair. I just was wondering if you'd be open to some amendments. I think that in general, adding wastewater thermal to tier 1 is makes sense. I think it's a really impressive technology, and it's worth looking at how do we increase all of our non-fossil fuel technologies and renewables in here. My concern is just that for consistency, all of our other thermal technologies, geothermal and otherwise, have to be tied to the Maryland grid. This is on page 3, line 25 to 28. And this is sort of how we've historically done it, that electrons are tied to the PJM grid and thermal is tied to the Maryland grid. And I could go into why I think that is if folks want to talk about it more, but I'm just wondering if you would entertain an amendment to make this consistent with the other thermal usage, and maybe we would do that in subcommittee, but
yeah, I definitely, at this point, as far as I'm concerned, the bill is in the possession of the committee and more specifically the subcommittee. So yeah, that would be the appropriate place, and all amendments and so forth, everything's on the table as far as I'm concerned at this point.
Okay, well, so then the second thing, if I could, is just, and we can take it up there, is on the biofuels, sorry, on the biogas. I just, from a broader energy planning perspective, I think we need to shift towards targeting our biogas usage towards those issues that are hardest to electrify, like high temp applications, because we're never going to make enough. Even if we capture all the methane, we're never going to make enough to replace all of the natural gas. And so the ones we make, we ought to be targeting. And so just as we expand what we're accepting as a usage for biogas, I think it's a good opportunity to start highlighting that, you know, we want to incentivize it primarily when it is replacing fracked gas in those areas that are hardest to electrify, because otherwise we're going to have it all over the place and we're not going to be able to make that shift that we need to make. So we can talk about it more in subcommittee, but I just wanted to offer that. And if you had any comments on that, or if the witnesses did, I'm happy to hear that as well.
Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I think this bill deals with wastewater, so it might actually include frack gas as well. That was a joke. Thank you.
Yeah, it completely went over my head. But Delegate Charkoudian, absolutely, yes. Let's talk about further with the subcommittee, and again, it's definitely a reasonable point. So let's talk about it and see what the will of the committee is.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Am I missing anyone else? If not, I'll go to the final witness that's testifying, Mr. Bruce Burkett.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair Dumais, and members of the committee. I'm Bruce Burkett, the Executive Director of the Mid-Atlantic Renewable Energy Coalition, we call MERIC. MERIC is a membership nonprofit organization consisting of utility-scale wind and solar developers, including offshore wind developers, and also wind turbine and PV solar module manufacturers. We appreciate the opportunity to address the committee on House Bill 561. And we also I understand, are supported in our comments by the American Clean Power Association, which was formerly the American Wind Energy Association. House Bill 561 would extend the resources qualifying under Tier 1 of Maryland's Renewable Energy Portfolio Standard, RPS, Specifically, it expands the definition of a qualifying Tier 1 renewable source to include, and I quote, raw or treated wastewater used as a heat source or sink for a heating or cooling system, end of quote. We have some concerns about the potential breadth of this definition. We're not necessarily opposed to this bill. I think this is more of an informational concern, but we have some concerns about the breadth of this definition and the need to extend the RPS to include what may not be properly characterized as renewable energy. For instance, the bill seems to permit fossil fuel generation to count, or resources to count towards the RPS if they're used to heat raw or treated wastewater for a heating or cooling system, in lines with the definition I just spoke about. Our concern with the bill, also our other concern with the bill is the bill is not additive. An RPS that counts on adding resources like new solar or wind energy resources is additive. However, this bill would only appear to add already existing resources, including, as I mentioned, fossil fuel technologies, and would also appear to permit these resources to be sourced from throughout the PJM region, in effect diluting the true renewable energy market in Maryland. We are prepared to work with the committee so that we better understand the scope of the proposed change to the RPS, the basis for that change, and the impact that this change could have on the RPS market. We are not prepared, as I noted, to indicate support for this bill without more information and hopefully amendment to narrow the bill's scope. I want to thank you for the time you've permitted me to speak, and appreciate this opportunity.
Any questions for Mr. Burkett? Seeing none, hearing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the oral testimony for the witnesses who have signed up. Being no further witnesses and no further bills, I'd like to declare that the public bill hearings for Friday, January 29th as having been held. Look for additional information regarding subcommittees on these and other bills. And with that, I'd like to ask the members to check your emails. We're gonna, where you'll be getting information regarding the voting session. If not ready at this moment, you'll be receiving it very soon from committee staff about Monday's voting session. That will be at 4:30. I believe it'll be very quick. To be honest, I'm thinking it'll be probably 20 minutes, if that. So this shouldn't go that long. But we will get you the list shortly. So be on the lookout for that. Are there any questions for me? The good of the order, as they say. If not, everyone have a good weekend, and
You too.
I will see you all there. Remember, if we get that snow, it just doesn't matter anymore. We're working virtually, so we will still be voting come Monday.
That's right. You too. See you guys. Have a great weekend.
All righty.
Take care, everybody.